On January 30th, 2014, a strange man walked out of the Pacific Ocean and onto a tiny island. His hair was tangled, his skin was burned by the sun, and he looked like he hadn't seen another human being in a very long time. The people living on the island rushed to help him. At first, they thought he was a fisherman who had been lost for a few days. But when they asked where he came from, his answer sounded impossible. According to him, he had been drifting across the Pacific Ocean for 438 days, more than a year, without an engine, without a radio, and with almost no supplies. Most people would have died within weeks. So how did he survive for more than a year at sea? And perhaps more importantly, was he even telling the truth? To understand what happened, we need to go back to December 2012. The man's name was José Salvador Alvarenga. He was an experienced fisherman living in Mexico. Fishing wasn't a hobby, it was how he made a living. The ocean was familiar to him. He had spent years working on fishing boats, and on December 21st, 2012, he left for what should have been a routine fishing trip. Joining him was a young crewmate named Ezequiel Cordoba. The plan was simple: head out into the ocean, catch fish, return home. Nothing unusual, nothing dangerous, just another day at work. But only a few hours after leaving shore, everything started to go wrong. The weather suddenly changed. Dark clouds appeared, the sea became rough, and before long, the small fishing boat was caught tonight in a powerful storm. Massive waves slammed into the vessel. Rain poured from the sky. Visibility disappeared. The two fishermen fought to stay afloat, but the storm refused to let go. Hours passed, then more hours. The boat was pushed farther and farther away from the coast. Eventually, the engine failed. Their radio stopped working, and just like that, their connection to the outside world was gone. No engine, no communication, no rescue, only water in every direction. At first, they believed someone would find them. Surely people would notice they were missing. Surely rescue teams would be searching. So they waited. One day passed, then another, but nobody came. The boat continued drifting deeper into the Pacific Ocean. Food supplies quickly disappeared. Fresh water ran out. The reality of the situation began to sink in. This wasn't a delay. This wasn't a minor problem. They were completely lost. And every day, the shoreline became more impossible to reach. Once the food was gone, the only option was adaptation. José began catching fish with his bare hands. Birds occasionally landed on the boat. He caught those too. Sometimes turtles appeared. Nothing was cooked. Everything was eaten raw. It wasn't pleasant, but survival rarely is. Water was an even bigger challenge. Rain became life itself. Whenever clouds appeared, they collected every drop they could. When rain didn't come, things became much more desperate. The days blended together, sunrise, sunset, ocean, repeat, over and over again, week after week, month after month. The Pacific Ocean became their entire world, but the ocean wasn't their biggest enemy. Hopelessness was. Ezequiel struggled with the situation. He missed his family, he missed home, and as the months passed, he began losing the will to continue. According to José, his crewmate eventually stopped eating. He stopped fighting, and one day, he died, just like that. One moment there were two people on the boat. The next, there was only one. José was now completely alone. No conversations, no help, no human contact, nothing. Just silence and an endless ocean.
Realmente impactante, sin palabras, contento, agradecido con Dios, con las personas que rescataron a mi hermano y infinitamente agradecido con ellos. No tengo palabras ni gestos con que agradecerles a ellos por todo lo que ellos están haciendo por él.
Cuando vi el video, entonces el video lo vi en mi trabajo porque mi jefe me lo buscó y vi el video y le digo, sí, es mi hermano. Digo, está así como está, pero es él.
Most people imagine survival as a physical challenge, but after enough time, it becomes a mental one. José later described talking to himself, talking to birds, talking to the ocean, anything to feel less alone. The human mind isn't built for that level of isolation. Days became months, months became nearly a year. The Pacific seemed endless. Every horizon looked exactly the same. Every morning brought the same question. Would today be the day someone finally found him? And every evening brought the same answer, no. Then one day, something changed. After more than a year drifting through the Pacific Ocean, José spotted something he hadn't seen in an incredibly long time. Land. At first, it barely seemed real. After spending so much time surrounded by nothing but water, the sight was almost unbelievable. But it was real. He had drifted all the way to the Marshall Islands, thousands of miles from where his journey began. After 438 days at sea, he had finally reached land, against all odds. He was alive. You might think the story ends there. It doesn't, because once people heard his story, many didn't believe him. The claim sounded impossible. Over a year alone at sea, living on raw fish and rainwater, drifting across the Pacific Ocean, to many people, it sounded like fiction. Journalists investigated, experts examined his story, questions were asked, details were checked, and while some debates remained, investigators found evidence supporting much of what he claimed. The route was possible. The timeline made sense, and suddenly, the impossible story didn't seem quite so impossible anymore. Today, José Salvador Alvarenga's survival story remains one of the most extraordinary ocean survival stories ever recorded. Not because he was a superhero, not because he had special equipment, but because he was an ordinary man placed into an extraordinary situation. A fishing trip that should have lasted a day turned into 438 days. A journey across one of the largest oceans on Earth. A story of survival, loss, isolation, and a refusal to give up. Because sometimes the most unbelievable stories aren't fiction at all. They really happened.